Hey all. In our last lesson, we took a look at some different ways we can use CSS in order to add images and just really kind of change up the look and feel a bit more. We can go down this rabbit hole for probably a couple of years where we can look at different properties that we can apply to different elements, and we can experiment with all the different ways that we can change the look and feel. What I'd like to do today is go through one interesting aspect of just design in general on the web. And I think this is something that you're looking at in other classes as well, like design principles. This is the idea of typography and really using different fonts on the web. So today I really want to focus on fonts. And this shouldn't be a very long lecture, but I do think it's an important one because I think fonts, as we all know, play a really big role in just the design of any visual element of a piece of software or an ad or anything that's visual. So when we talk about fonts on a computer system, it's interesting because fonts are actually a piece of software. People come together and they actually design fonts by by literally writing a program. So you can look at a font as a piece of software. And what does that mean to us? That means fonts actually have versions, they go through iterations, they change over time. There are bugs in fonts sometimes, and you may have seen that with some fonts maybe you've tried to use in, say, Photoshop or some other tool, where you get like that box, right? And it just doesn't know what to render. Maybe the font designer just left out that glyph. We call that a glyph in a font, or character, or whatever you'd want to say. So fonts are a piece of software. Now, just like images and just like our CSS files and our JavaScript files and our HTML files, when we're talking about fonts from a web application perspective, this is a piece of software that we need to download as consumers of a website or a web application. So what do I mean by that? Let's go ahead and I'm gonna access our application here, and I'm gonna go to our about.html. Let's take a look at where we're at here. So we have this page. It's got a nice background here. I've got this mountain shot, and we say hello here. Let's go ahead and inspect this hello and see what we got. So we pull this up. You can see that we have our inline styling here, and we've styled that H1, and we've overridden the font size, and we don't really have any font declaration, so it doesn't say anything about the font that this is. Now, if we look at any of these elements on the page, we're not going to see anything regarding fonts. Now, this is using the system's default font. So I think typically this is either some type of sans serif or serif font. This looks like it's probably Arial or something like that. So in order for us to change these fonts, we need to give it some type of font declaration. Now, there are built-in fonts in most computer systems. You are relying on what the user has installed if you do that. So if we say something like font family here, Arial, there you go. So it did change. So that you see now the font changed to an Arial font, which is a sans serif font. That may have been a serif font, like Times Roman or something like that. Yeah. So we can use this font family declaration to change the font of our elements using this specific font family rule. Now, you don't normally put just one font in here. You would put what we call a font stack. And we do that because we don't know if the user is going to have this font installed. So typically we would put a specific font and then say a sans serif to fall back to. And you can see how it fell back to that font. And we can flip it. And that should, oh, that's not doing that. I think I might be typing Arial wrong. But in any event, you can declare multiple fonts within the font family. Now, this is interesting, but it's not really what I wanted to go into too deeply today. What I really wanted to show you was, instead of relying on the user's font stack, whatever's on their computer system, which is really a bad way to go about it unless you're using the most general fonts available, so you can be fairly confident they'll have them, there are resources on the web that we can use that host fonts for us. And this is kind of an interesting topic because a lot of companies put a lot of there's a lot of value in their fonts. Think about brands like Nike or Coca-Cola or Disney. You think Disney would want to change their font? I don't think so, right? That font is very important to the brand. In fact, I believe they designed that font, their own font. So a lot of companies do that, but companies may also have to license the font from a foundry or a designer of a font. So there are, just like any piece of software, fonts have different licensing. So you can't just go out there and grab a font. Just like if somebody, say for example, took one of your drawings that you've spent a lot of time on, or a piece of artwork that you've produced, and then used it for themselves to go out there and make money. I don't think you'd be too happy about that, right? You'd want to be able to share in the economic reward that that user of your art is going to receive. And you have every right to. So font foundries, designers of fonts, license their fonts in different ways. I've worked with some clients where their font budget was in the 5 figures per month to maintain fonts. So they would be paying license fees of upwards of $30,000 to $50,000 a month to use certain fonts. Now, sometimes this is an opportunity for us as web developers to come in, and if it's a possibility, like it's not that much of an important font like the Disney font, we can come in and say, hey, there may be other fonts we can use that are similar that have different and less expensive licensing models. Now, Google has a big incentive for you to use fonts that are fast and available on the web. So what Google has done is they actually have put together what's called Google Fonts. So if you just Google Fonts and go to fonts.google.com, this is a collection of, I don't even know how many fonts are on here. There are probably thousands of fonts on here. These are all openly available, so they're all open licenses, so that you can use them without any licensing fees. You can use them and not have to worry about, if you're breaking some type of copyright or anything like that. And in a similar vein, they are also hosted by Google, and they're hosted in an environment that is optimized for performance. So why would Google do something like this? Well, Google wants people to have fast websites, because when you Google something and your website comes up and you click that link and it doesn't load fast, that ultimately will reflect bad on Google for many users. They'll think Google's slow, not the actual website. And they don't want that. They want everyone's experience on the web to be fast. So Google has fonts.google.com. Now, you may have used other services or heard of other services like Typekit, which is Adobe's service. So fonts.adobe.com, similar thing. This is more of a subscription service, so you can subscribe to this and you can go out there and grab different fonts. And they also host these fonts for you, and you can then integrate them into your web application. So today, what I'd like you to do, and play along with me with this, and this will ultimately be the assignment for this lecture, is let's go ahead and we're going to use Google Fonts because it's free and it's pretty easy to use. We can go ahead and explore different fonts. So you can look at different categories, different serifs or sans serifs, display, handwriting. And I think everyone knows when I say sans serif or serif, right? So a serif are these little tiny kind of accents you see on the font, right? Like New York Times and things like that use a serif font for a lot of their titles. So all these little tiny accents on each kind of edge of the font is called a serif. Now, a sans serif is just without a serif, which is why it's called a sans serif, does not have any of those accents. Now, I'm by no means gonna go into like when you should use a serif and a sans serif. I think Professor Biederman is probably much better suited than I to teach that. He's a very talented designer, and he could definitely help you with when to select these. But there are a lot of both options available on Google Fonts. So let's take a look and let's try to bring some of these into our page and play around with how we can change the fonts. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to select them all. Let's take a quick look at a couple of them. And I want to grab a font that's a little dramatic. Like this one's pretty dramatic, right? Climate Crisis. This is kind of cool. So I'm going to click into this. This is kind of crazy. A little hard to read. I'm not too crazy about it, but it's dramatic. You'll be able to see like, hey, we're using this font. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I want to use this. I'm going to say download font family. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. I'm not going to go download font family. This is going to let you download it so that you can host it yourself. I don't want us hosting it. I want Google to do that for us. They can do it faster than we can. So if you look over at the side right here, you can see that we have the different families that we've selected, and it'll show you exactly how to bring it into the page. Now, I don't want, it looks like Roberto's on here. I'm going to say remove all. I don't have any selected. And why do I not see? Okay. So this is what you got to do here. Something this interface changed slightly. So there's going to be different styles of the font. For this particular font, there's only a regular, so it's not bold or anything like that, with a 400 weight on it. So if you click here, select regular 400, it'll go ahead and put it into your selected stack. And if you go here in the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see all your selected fonts. Now what you want to do is you want to go through and select all the fonts you want to use. I would recommend on any application, try not to use more than 2 fonts. So you kind of want like a header font and a body font. And you want those to kind of play together nicely, right? You want them to be kind of complementary so they look nice together. And what Google Fonts typically does, look at that. They don't do that on this font. This font may be a little too crazy for that. Like if we go back here and I go to Roberto, Roberto's used a lot. No, they don't have it on here. They used to show a piece here where you can see how to like what it complements well with, but it looks like that may have changed. And that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's go back here. I'm going to select one more. Let's scroll through this a little bit. Let's get a little crazy. Ooh, look at this like Western one. This is cool. A little like 8-bit style. There's so many interesting ones, and quite honestly, a nice font on a web page, it just goes such a long way for the design. It makes it really nice and crisp, and it looks good. Let's go ahead and grab. Which one should I grab, guys? I can't choose. There's too many. Kind of want to do like an 8-bit one. Let's go back up here and let's just search 8-bit. No, maybe retro. No. Like a handwriting one. All right, let's do a handwriting one. We'll do one like a script or something. This is not going to complement well at all, but it'll be dramatic so you can see it. All right, so we're going to say select regular 400. And now we have Climate Crisis and Great Vibes selected. Now what this did for us, it did a couple of things. It built out this link HTML for us. So all we have to do here is copy this piece, boom, go over to our application, go to one of our pages. So I'm going to go to the About page, in the head, right above the CSS. You want to put this above your CSS. Actually, I'm going to put it above all the CSS, right below the title. I'm going to paste that in. Now, when a web browser is parsing an HTML document, it's going to go out and start to download this information from the top down, in most cases. So this will grab the fonts first. It'll download the fonts. You can see it's coming from Google, and then we can use them in our styling. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to save that. Let's go back here. Now there's one last thing we need to do. Now we can use those fonts in our font family declaration. So I'm going to go ahead and go down here and copy this. And now in any element that we select, I'm going to go to the mystyle.css. Now any element we select, we could say font family and give it whatever font we want. So I'm going to say that in the header, we want the font family to be Climate Crisis. And it's Climate Crisis, and then it will fall back to any cursive font that's available on the system. So let's see what happens. So if we go back here, there we go. We've got the font. It's a little big, but it's there. And I think what I'd eventually like to do is maybe center this bad boy right here and maybe fade this image out or something like that so it looks kind of prominent on the page. But there we go. I'm actually going to change the color here. Right now it's got that tomato color. We can't really see it too well. I'm going to take this styling out actually. I'm going to take the inline out so that we don't have any inline. Now we just have a black text there. And I'm going to go back here and I'm going to put that styling here. So I'm going to say color, let's make it like a darker gray, not just black right away, right? And then we'll say font size, we'll make it like 4 EMs, really big. There we go. Nice. Okay, so now we got some great text. We're using that font. Now, if we wanted to use the other font, say for example, we wanted to style my name is Nick using the other script font, what we can do is we can go ahead and grab this piece, the font family Great Vibes, and we need to figure out what element this is to select it. So that's an H2. Okay, and my name is Nick, so let's go ahead. How are we gonna select that H2 in CSS, guys? How are we gonna do that? Hopefully you guessed it. You're just gonna say H2, open, close, paste that in. Now, if we go back here, we should see my name is Nick in script. Excellent. So now we can bring in any one of these fonts on Google Fonts and make our web application look really, really clean. So that's a quick introduction to fonts. Play along. The assignment for this is to really just grab some fonts you like and try to put them on the page using the CSS font family. All right, awesome. Have fun.